Is Dr. Zwischenberger here?
Yeah.
Is this a,
He's right there.
Right.
oh, there you are. Society for Improving Medical Professional Learning.
Be prepared to be educated.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. Marwan and I talked about the idea that everybody in this room is either an educator or being educated. So let's talk a little bit about what we've been doing in surgery to improve that whole concept. I'm going to present SIMPL. Nobody in SIMPL is paid or has any conflicts because we all volunteer our time. SIMPL has 3,500 surgical trainees at 155 residency programs and 20 specialties, including cardiology, critical care, and CT surgery. We embrace evidence-based education, and we've incorporated all known evidence-based best practices. The work has also advanced the field of education. We have over 48 peer-reviewed publications in the last 5 years. There's 3 goals. We started this in 2015, right before COVID, well before COVID, but you didn't get to hear about it because we didn't get to tell you about it 2 years ago. But there's 3 goals. It's reliable delivery and collection of operative performance assessments or procedures, improved feedback for residents, and it's feasible for every case. How does this work? You have your smartphone and you start a simple evaluation. The notification is automatically sent to your counterpart, either the faculty to the resident or the resident to the faculty. The users complete this assessment in as few as 4 steps, and the faculty can then dictate feedback to give you more robust critiques. So I'm going to run you through it.
A brief demo of the SIMPL application, which is designed to make it feasible for raters to rate resident performance for every case they do. I'm logged in right now in the role of an attending. The first is the evaluation tab, which lists all the pending evaluations, and the settings lets you change things like notification preferences. I'm going to go over the evaluation flow first in a little more detail, then I'll do it again one more time at a normal pace. Once the evaluation is available, you can click on Evaluate, and the first screen asks you what Zwisch level the resident performed. If you forget what the Zwisch levels are, you can look here, and you choose one of the levels, and let's say passive help. The next question is, what is the performance of the resident? And let's just choose very good. And the last question is, what is the complexity, the relative complexity of the case? And it was the easiest 1/3. And that's it. You can optionally dictate feedback to the resident if you want to give him something more formative. So performance would be a lot better if he used his left hand. And now that's available for the resident to review once you submit the evaluation, which I've done right here. Now it's saved on the server. So that pace is a little slower than it normally would be in practice, since this is designed to be very easy to use. So a more normal pace would be here. And that's it. That's a complete evaluation.
So we've done a study on this, and we show that exchange averages 14 seconds. 14 seconds to improve your feedback on learning to help you be better the next time. So we also, over the last 2 years, have worked it into where we can do case logging through the ACGME, and this is through the SIMPL app. So you get a twofer. For your 14 seconds, you get feedback, and you can log your case. This is available on both Apple products and Google products for both an iPhone and an Android. And let's just run through it real quick. Now, they named it after me. It's a little embarrassing, but on the other hand, I had to go with it. There's 4 levels of faculty guidance. 1 is show and tell. That's been around forever. The master and the apprentice. The master shows the apprentice, and the apprentice hopes the master drops dead so they get to do something. Next is active help, where the master walks the apprentice through, and the apprentice actually gets to do the case, but they don't do any of the thinking. Next is passive help. That's where the master stands back and lets the apprentice walk the way through the case, think through the case, kind of muddle through the case, and they step in when they need to in order to help. And then finally, supervision only, where you mimic actual practice. Now, what's the basis for this? Well, in surgery, we're constantly balancing guidance versus autonomy. You can show somebody everything every step of the way, but they never learn how to think. Whereas if you turn them loose and don't provide any guidance, they never learn how to get better. So you have to balance those two, and you always have to keep in mind that the attending is the physician of record. They're the ones that gets the permit, technically. They're the one that decides whether to operate. They're the ones that has to ensure quality outcomes, and they're the one that get to charge for it and get paid, plus they're the one that can get sued. So what's the anatomy of a procedure? Well, we all know that procedures start out, and it may be easy at the beginning, and the resident can do a lot, and then it gets into a tough spot where the attending has to help, and then the attending can back off a little bit. So we had to come up with a way to judge that. So we decided that the level of case is the majority of the critical portion. So in this case, the critical portion, the resident is doing passive help, then they get a little extra help from the faculty, and then they back off and get to do more. So this would be a passive help case because they did 80% under those circumstances. Next is the performance scale. This will be familiar to you. You walk in the room, you don't know what the hell you're doing, you haven't prepared, you have a critical deficiency, you just flopped in the room because that's where you were assigned and you didn't know what was going on. The next is where you come in, you may have seen it a time or two, but you're still inexperienced and you muddle through or you still don't really know what to do. The next is intermediate, which is what most residents are. They've got some experience, they have an idea what to do, but they can't do the whole case by themselves, so they get help. Next is practice ready, to where, yeah, if you went out into practice, you could probably get through the case. Then you may need a partner to help you now and again. And finally, as all surgeons know, you're exceptional, and everybody knows God gave you special talents, and you want to knock it out of the park. But that doesn't happen every time. And it's just for that case. Now, something magic happens. When you do a per-click performance, all that good guy, bad guy stuff goes away. Oh, Joe's a good guy. He'll do good today for sure. Oh, Steven's a lousy surgeon. We know he has hands that don't work. He'll never get to do the case. That goes away when you're being judged on a per-click basis. Next is a case complexity. And we all know in a given practice, there's the easiest third, the average third, and the hardest third. But we also have Dr. I'm So Famous. It goes like this. Now, look, you have to understand, everybody sends me their toughest cases, so I do all the hardest cases. So I'm going to have to do this case, and you'll get to watch. But your residency director will figure that out very quickly because they're always doing show and tell. The next thing is dictated feedback. We've studied that. And what we've learned is good feedback is encouraging, it's specific, it's corrective, it has a level of entrustment that if you improve, you're going to get to do more. And it has a learning plan. This business of, hey, great case, it feels good, but it's worthless. Okay, the next is how quickly do you have to evaluate somebody? Well, we've studied this, and it turns out that the same day is very robust. The next day is brush strokes. The next day, you might remember a few highlights. And by the third day, it's garbage. It's just a cartoon, so we throw them away. The next is, what is simple data? We have this huge compilation of 350,000 interactions now. We are a safety organization. The data is used for research, education, and quality improvement, and it's protected from subpoena, where IRB, FERPA, and HIPAA protected. So just quickly, SIMPL is judged to be effective relative to interrotation. It's been shown that the faculty and the residents have virtually identical perceptions of what happened during the case. And we're now at the point of customizing our first iteration to where we have a unified platform that allows us to accommodate entrustable professional activities, which are coming. If you don't know, watch out, because you're going to be judged by your entrustable professional activities, and we can track that. And finally, we can also support competency-based medical education and other quality improvement tools. The last thing is simple bedside. Is we've learned that people not only do procedures in the OR, but they do a lot of stuff at the bedside. So we now have an evaluation by a senior resident or faculty. The program director then goes through these evaluations and certifies the resident as competent. And then once they're certified, the trainee's app displays their certification status, so the attending of the senior residents knows that you've fulfilled the requirements for that particular thing. And in this case, the example is a chest tube. Sounds simple enough, but if you screw it up, you got a problem. So this is it. Fastest run through 10 years or 20 years worth of work. This is endorsed by the SIMPL member programs, all 155 of them right now, the American Board of Surgery, the Association of Program Directors in Surgery, the Association for Surgical Education, the National Board of Medical Examiners, and hopefully some of you guys will want to join before your boards make you join, and that way you'll be ahead of the game. Thank you.
This would seem to lend itself well to simulation, because the resident does a pictectomy, he might not do another one for several months. Whereas in the sim lab, you could use the same kind of feedback.
Well, he was not a plant. I would have planted that question had he not done it, but that's exactly what we do. I run a sim lab every Wednesday afternoon from 3 to 5, and we bring the residents in, especially the I6s. The integrated residents are the ones that are the most vulnerable because they come right out of medical school, and you don't know whether they got to do squat during medical school, right? So you get an I6 resident, and you're able to work them through different simulations and get them up to speed to where they can actually perform in the operating room. So you're exactly right. That's what we do.
Danny.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, and then Masood and Dr. Slepian.
Jay, this is fantastic. I mean, I think one of the biggest struggles for any academic program is how to evaluate people, especially as the training paradigm is changing and we don't have hostages anymore. It's, people who come and go. And so I guess what's been the biggest barrier to wider adoption of this, and what do we need to do to bring it into our residency programs?
Well, the problem is your enthusiasm is not universal. What we found among residents is there's 4 kinds of residents. There's the enthusiasts that think this is great and love feedback. There's those that want to please you as a program director, so they say, yeah, I'll do it because he's making me do it, but I'll do it. Then we have those that are I call the avoiders. There's 4 different categories of those. There's those that know they have deficiencies and they don't want you to know it. There's those that are disorganized and they're always scattered. They're always behind. They're always running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and they can't quite get it together. And then there's those that are, we don't use the term lazy in surgery ever, but there's those that just don't want to fool with it. And then, and so it's a mystery to me. Oh, and then there's those that are so arrogant they don't think they need it. But we see that those 4 categories that avoid feedback are all dangerous. And you as a program director need to address them. And if you catch them early while they're still influenceable and they're not chief residents who think they know it all, then they'll listen to you and they get better. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Dr. Zwischenberger. My name is Faraz Masood. I'm a cardiac surgeon at WashU in St. Louis. This is a really good idea. I downloaded your app while you were giving the talk, so I'm going to try to use it. My question is, we have an apprenticeship model in our training institute. So a resident would come to me for a month and would work with me for a month. So as he or she is slowly progressing, they would know their limitations, I would know their limitations, and they would keep going further and further. So by that time, by the time they're done with me, in a month later, they're getting good ratings on the SIMPL app. But if the program does not have apprenticeship model, sometimes they're with me, sometimes with their Mani, sometimes with their you, how would that resident continue to garner good results with different faculty going back and forth?
So that's a huge problem. And the problem is you're unique. You've already thought in terms of graduated responsibility. You already embrace the residents' education and move them forward. But you're kind of rare. I hate to tell you that. Most faculty just want to get through the case and get their RVUs and move on. That's embarrassing to have to say, but we've studied it and that's the case. So the fact that you gradually move residents along is to your credit. The problem is if there's no app like this in which to provide documented feedback, the next guy comes along and starts from scratch. And he may not have your dedication to education. He may not particularly care about the resident moving along. You may have the guy that follows you be Dr. I'm so famous that does all the cases himself. So it's very important that you adapt this consistent technique of evaluating the residents so that they can progress in a graduated fashion and have it documented.
Thank you.
Dr. Slepian?
Jay, this is great, and congrats. I think the key thing is it would be great to then expand this to interventional cardiology, interventional radiology, anybody who's doing procedures. The key word to me that you didn't say, but I would use, is bias. So this takes away a lot of the bias.
Right.
The quick question is, have you compared, for instance, using the system the way it is today versus having independent people take a look at? And that kind of builds off the last question, which is, what would be the elements if somebody who has not been in that case be able to evaluate? You know, are the little snippets of the procedure? Are there end results? I mean, how would somebody else do that quick click?
Well, the first thing, we started out with a 4-hour seminar to train people on how to be consistent in these gradings. And thank goodness, one good thing that came out of COVID, probably the only good thing, is we all switched to Zoom education, and we learned we could consolidate it into an hour. So in 1 hour, we'll have you and everybody in the room having the same scale. The second thing is exactly what you said is true. And that is, every procedure has exactly the same concepts and exactly the same problem as major surgery. The genesis of this was me being a general thoracic surgeon, but it's just as important that somebody can put in a chest tube correctly. Right now I'm teaching third-year medical students. You can't find a third-year medical student that can put in a Foley correctly. So the point is that all procedures have the same graduated responsibility steps that have to be undertaken in order to achieve autonomy and do it correctly.
Got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.